Hi, it's Sam and I'm back with another video for lawnfawn. Today I'm creating this winter theme card using Flappy Holiday, Winter Birds, Woodgrain Backdrops, the Platform Pop-Up Cloud Inserts, and the Platform Pop-Up Die Set. I am also going to be using the stitched banner sentiments, which I will show later. I am starting by coloring all my images with Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. I'm using brown, mustard, and light beige for the pine cones. And as always, I start by spritzing some water onto my craft mat and dampening my water brush, and then setting it aside. I'm using my mid color to kind of start shading where I want the darkest part. Then I use my damp water brush to pull out the color. Then I go over that same area with the brown, the darkest color, then the medium color, and then the light color, and I pull it all out. And it was quick and simple. Next, I'm showing you what I'm going to use for the nest. I'm using mustard, natural beige, and yellow. And I'm just using the mustard as a shading aspect for the nest, and then a little bit of the natural beige to pull it so it's not a bright yellow nest, but it is more yellow than brown. I'm using May green, and yellow green for the pine needles, which don't really have an area to color, but that didn't stop me. I use a little bit of the darkest green along the stamped image, then the medium green, and then the light green to pull it all out. And this is just because I wanted these pops of green, but I didn't want to leave them black and white, and I didn't want to stamp them in green. So yeah, that was my fix. And I love that you can choose whatever you want. You can stamp it in green, which would save you a step, or you can color around the stamped image with your green as well, and then die cut it out. Next, I move on to coloring the branches, and I'm using the same colors, mustard and light beige. And I'm trying to keep all these browns, the nest, the pine cones, the the branches, all shades of brown, but different shades, so they don't all kind of blend in together. So I'm only using two shades, the mustard and the light beige, for the branches. And as you can see, I went out of the lines, but I just colored it a little bit with my clear water from my water brush and dabbed it up with a paper towel. Easy peasy. Next, we're going to color these sweet red birds, and I'm calling them cardinals. And we're going to use scarlet red, carmine red, and dark brown. And as always, the dark brown is the shading part of my birds. I'm just using a tiny bit because a little bit goes a very long way. And I'm starting with the reds on these birds, but do as I say, not as I do, because I should have colored the other images first, the other areas on this image first, because red has a tendency to bleed, and I decided, wait, before I color any more birds, let me just do the right thing and use my light grays first. So I'm using warm gray 2 and gray along with vanilla to color in the faces of the birds and a little bit of their tummies. And I'm just going to do that for all the birds, as I said, to prevent the red bleeding into those little gray areas. Because, like I said, red has a mind of its own. It just likes to go where it wants to go, and a little bit goes a long way. But now that image dried a little bit, it wasn't too bad. But I always like to color everything else before reds. Next, I'm using pale orange and carmine to add my pink cheeks on all my little critter birds. And then I'm just using the same exact colors I used for the other bird on all of my other cardinals, let's quote unquote the adult cardinals, the dark brown, the red carmine, and scarlet red. And I'm just starting by using my darkest shade, adding my mid grade, and then my lightest, and then I'm using a water brush to blend it all out. And again, I went outside the line, but I just used a water brush to color it up. Red is harder to pick up than all the other colors, but it helps. These water-based markers are easy to clean up outside of the lines, which is good for me. And next I'm going to color the little baby birds, and I am using vanilla, warm gray 2, and gray. Same color I used for the faces and the tummies of the other birds. And these are such cute little images. There wasn't much to do, but I did add pink cheeks, of course, naturally. And I'm using bright orange and light yellow to do the beaks, just tiny little dabs of color. And lastly, light blue, pale green, and turquoise green for the scarves, which, if you've seen me color, you know is my favorite color combination for anything minty green. Turquoise green and light blue are perfect if you want like a aqua color, but if you add that pale green, it's just like the perfect little addition. All right, now we're going to get on to moving to making the actual card base. First, I'm using the big platform mechanism itself and die cutting it 2 times from white cardstock. And I'm using the T-shaped die and also cutting it 2 times from white cardstock. And then I'm using the platform pop-up cloud inserts die, and I'm cutting the large piece from white cardstock and the small cloud borders twice with white cardstock. Lots of white cardstock here. Okay, here is where we start our ink blending adventure. And pro tip, if you want to save some time, use green cardstock. I wish I had green cardstock. I had planned on using green cardstock, and I probably spent an hour and a half searching my room for green cardstock, and I am out. So I had to resort to ink blending, which I love and no big deal. But green cardstock would have been my preferred choice in this instance. I am using Mowed Lawn and Twisted Citron with just a hint, a little whisper, a little kiss of pine needles. A little goes a long way with the pine needles. I'm trying to just get the bottoms of the trees because what I'm going to do is add a snowy top to this card since it is Christmas winter themed. So I'm going to clean up all this ink blending to get it all out. And now I'm just pouring a little bit of water on my craft mat, and I'm using gesso, which is a white base paint, and I'm using a very dry brush. There's no water on that brush, and I'm just tapping the white gesso on the tops of the trees to make it look like they're covered with snow. And this was super fun, and I love doing it. And you can see how it kind of looks like a snow covering on top. And those are the trees. Now I'm moving on to ink blending the platform pop-up itself. Again, really wanted to use wood grain cardstock. Really wanted to use brown cardstock. Fresh out. I have so much white cardstock, which is fantastic because I use it obviously all the time. But I really need to amp up my colored cardstock because is it just me? I mean, I felt like I did not have any of the colors that I needed. So I am resorting to ink blending, which is totally fine. I'm using Vintage Photo and Fossilized Amber, making sure to do a little bit of the ink blending on the inside part of the card since that will show as well. As you can see, the blending is not smooth or even, which is going to be fine because we're not done with this. This platform pop-up is not done. It's ink blended, but it's not done. It's got a little bit of journey. Let's go on the adventure with it. I'm adding Vintage Photo to the edges with mostly Fossilized Amber to give it that warm tree feeling. And again, the insides of the card, since that will show, since it's a 3D card. And now I'm going to use my Woodgrain Backdrops and stamp the wood grain onto my platform to give it that feeling of a tree. This is where the wood grain paper would have come in super handy because guess what? All that work is done for you. You ink blend it, the grain shows. Or even better, you just use brown ink wood grain paper. However, story of my life. I'm doing it the hard way. I have to say though, I do love the stamp set. I love the wood grain, and I think it came out really good. It just added some extra stamps, extra steps. So if you want to recreate a card similar to this, I'm just trying to give you some tips to save yourself some time. But I do love how the wood grain came out and how it kind of looks like a tree. I'm using a Misty and lining up my stamp set and just having trouble, but making it work. I don't use Misty all the time, but for these large stamp sets where I have to stamp next to each other a lot, I definitely want to make it the most accurate possible. And as you can see, they look like trees. Well, they're starting to anyway. But I'm not done yet because the tree leaves have snow on them. So of course the branches, the actual bark has to have snow too. So I'm just spritzing some white acrylic ink on top and dripping it on to spread the snow factor. Okay, now once everything is dry, I am going to just fold over every single perforated line. There are two edges on the side that get folded over, two on the top, plus some flaps that get all folded over. And I'm just folding them to make sure that when we put the card together, the card knows what to do. The paper can lead the way. Okay, so now we're going to put some tape on the T-shaped die cuts as well, on the little flap that we folded. I'm pushing it through the flap. Ugh, I'm sorry. I'm pushing it through with the stamp side facing me, pulling it tight so that it's all flush with the die cut hole, folding it over, and then I'm just going to peel off this other release tape, lift it up, press it down, and there is half of the platform pop-up. I'm showing you again a little bit of adhesive on the T flap, pulling it through, pulling it nice and flush, pressing it down, pulling off the other release paper and folding it over, and we're done. I know this went super fast, but there are Kelly Marie and Shari do much better videos of introducing this die set. And then once everything is all ready, we're going to line up these edges, take off the release paper of one flap, press it over, and now we're ready to add our cloud pop-up insert. I'm just adding tape to the very bottom perforated image, where there's a line, taking off the release paper and lining up that line at the bottom with the first folded line of my platform, adding more release paper to the other side so I can fold it over like a book, and then removing the release paper from the last flap, and it's done. I mean, it was so easy. Now I'm just going to add these front little treetops / clouds to the T's, the little T dies, so that it adds more treetops. And that part is done. I know I went super fast, but it was so easy. Next, I'm heat embossing the sentiments. The first one, this is where the stitched sentiment banner comes into play. And then this other sentiment, I'm just going to cut in a thin banner. And now I'm ready to put this together. Usually I know where my images are going to go on my card. I lay it out before I start recording, but I didn't this time, and it's hard with a 3D card to line it all up. So I just thought to myself, let's just play, which is my favorite thing. And so I added this tree branch. I made sure that when I fold the card down, it doesn't get stuck or prevent the card from folding flat. And I'm just adding a little bit of birds here with some pine needles and pine cones. The nest is going to go up at the top with one bird inside of it, and then I decided to add the other bird with a piece of acetate so it looks like it's flying a little bit out of the nest, which is just so cute, so adorable. And the little bird up there is flying up. I mean, I love the contrast of the bright red with the bright green, especially for like a holiday card. Very festive. And then I decided that I was going to use as many of these pieces as I could. Sometimes I color too much, but I pretty much used almost every image here. And I was like, where can I stick this last little tree branch? But I couldn't find a place. So I just decided to add some more pine cones and pine needles to the card and finish off by making sure everything was glued down nice and strong. And that's the card. I mean, it really was so simple. The longest part was the ink blending, I promise. But I love how it is flat and it'll fit in an envelope, but it still pops up with this fun scene of these birds in their winter tree and the cute little baby bird flying away from the nest with his adult friend. With the snow-covered treetops and the sentiment that's from our neck of the woods, and they're in the woods. I hope that you had so much fun making this card with me. And I could just pop this up and down all day. I think I showed everyone in my house. But thanks so much for watching me make this card, and I hope that it brought you joy, and be sure to check it out up on the Lawn Fawn blog. Thanks again. Bye.